Welcome to part 8 of this series as we continue to see the similarities and the fallacies that both theists and statists often resort when attempting to refute their opposition. This time, it's about how they both often resort to the argument for morality. In other words, trying to claim that their position is morally or ethically superior or impugning the morality of their opposition's viewpoint. At an extreme, the person may claim that his belief provides a source of objective morality that is unimpeachable. This sets up an interesting situation where anything that source does automatically becomes moral. In religion, the argument goes something like this.
No one can be moral without God. Morality exists, therefore God exists.
And of course, what would happen if God didn't exist?
Well, then we'd just be animals.
And even more extreme,
what would stop us from running around and raping and killing everybody?
Of course, there are lots of problems with this. For one thing, there are many different gods written about in various religions, all of whom have a different moral code. But even if we just confine ourselves to Christianity, we find a lot of things that we consider to be immoral, and rightly so. For example, keeping slaves, or stoning adulterers and people who work on Sunday.
Death to the gays!
But more than that, it's pretty dehumanizing. It means that people would only perform moral acts for selfish reasons, to avoid being punished.
Be good, or you'll go to hell.
They also use morality to attack their opponents. For example, creationists keep making the claim that evolution is immoral, but evolution is descriptive, not prescriptive, and as such, it cannot be moral or immoral.
If children are taught they're animals, then they'll behave like animals.
Or even,
evolution is about survival of the fittest. They're saying we should kill our weakest members.
Of course, evolution doesn't say that at all, but that hardly stops them. Funny thing is, when you look at it, their moral code isn't very consistent. There are many passages in the Bible where it's perfectly okay to burn villages and kill innocent children and even babies if God says it's okay. It's amazing how the moral code can change whenever a devoted follower says God wants it to. This brings in an important concept, Euthyphro's dilemma. This is a Platonic dialogue between Socrates and Euthyphro discussing the issue of morality. The basic question is an act moral or immoral because God says it is, or is God merely passing on to us what is moral and immoral all by themselves?
It's moral because God says so.
Then if God tells you to murder children, that must be good.
But no, God's just telling us what's objectively moral.
Then we don't need God, and we can determine this objective morality on our own. Cut out the middleman.
No, it's moral because God says so.
And the argument inevitably goes around in a circle. Of course, there are completely secular moral creeds out there, and that would seem to negate the entire argument. Statists also employ the argument for morality all the time.
Without government, what would stop us from running around killing and raping everybody?
Sound familiar? It's the exact same argument. Just replace God with government. People are inherently evil and need a threat of punishment to keep them on the right track. There's no difference. Well, except for the fact that we have no proof that hell actually exists. Prisons certainly do, but there's no indication that we'd all turn into mass-murdering rapists without it. Of course, we find all sorts of different moral codes in governments. We have the extremes like Nazi Germany, where the good thing to do is kill all the Jews. Of course, our government is too enlightened for that. But it does throw people in jail for having a few ounces of a plant in their pockets.
But drugs are bad!
But what happens when government does bad things to fight drugs, like raid the wrong house and kill the family dog, or take people's property without so much as charging them with a crime? How often do any of them get punished? Now think about this. You're living in a dictatorship. Your dictator makes it nigh impossible for citizens to band together to broadcast their criticisms of him. He goes after websites that post leaked documents revealing his corruption. He assassinates his own citizens and invades other countries that pose no threat. He monitors everyone's communications without a warrant, makes you show your papers to travel around the country, takes people's possessions without even so much as charging them with a crime, makes it hard for people to create businesses that compete with his wealthy friends, and kicks people out of their homes to give that property to those same wealthy friends. Now, what do you think about that guy?
Well, he's a tyrant. The people need to overthrow him.
Well, okay, but the U.S. does all of these things. Does that mean we need to overthrow our government?
Well, of course not. We're a democracy.
And so, a democratic government becomes their god, no matter what they do. Again, morality should be applied consistently. If it's wrong for a dictator to do something, if it's wrong for you and me to do something, then it's wrong for a government, even a democracy or a republic, to do it as well. And yet, the statists use the very same special pleading to let their own state out of its moral limitations.
But people voted for them.
Oh, so since a majority of people said they wanted this, it's immoral not to go along with it? So then, what about elected officials who go against their party leaders? Are they being immoral now? And would it be right for those party leaders to force them to vote their way? There's no difference. And what about outside of government? If Christians outnumber atheists, does that mean that Christians get to call themselves lawmakers and pass laws restricting what atheists can do? Hey, you know what else the majority of those involved agree on? A gang rape. See the problem? Morality must be consistently applied. If majority rule is good for one group, it must be good for all groups, and clearly it isn't. They even attack the science that goes against their God, only instead of evolution, they go against economics. For example, when the economic consensus says that the minimum wage causes unemployment for the very people it's supposed to help, they scream,
"Why do you hate the poor?"
But they're not saying the poor don't deserve better pay, they're saying it doesn't work to force it. Again, it's descriptive, not prescriptive. Consider this comment from Itchyback on part 1 of this series. Ethics with your philosophy is the most dubious one. There is none, and you fail. And the funny, sad thing is I can see you, Shane, playing around ethics which have no objectivity, and you pigeonhole all that think ethically otherwise as statists. There is no good, at least objectively, nor bad if the cat is black or brown. Nor is there morality of any kind, good or bad, in free market. But when you draw in ethics, or was it me, there is no free market. Just subjective statements, libertarian and statist. Again, no difference at all from the theist argument. And yes, it's just as dehumanizing.
Be good or you'll go to jail.
Jail or hell, it's pretty much the same idea. Okay, so jail actually exists and hell doesn't, but that's irrelevant to the point. The idea is that people aren't going to behave unless they have selfish reasons for doing so, to avoid punishment. See how similar it is? We even have an analog to Euthyphro's dilemma. Lots of statists say things like,
"You need to follow the law because that's the moral thing to do."
but there was a time and a place where turning Jews in to be executed was the law. Was that the right thing to do? In this country, there was a time when turning in fugitive slaves and those who helped them was the law. Was that the right thing to do?
Well, that's just different.
Really? Just like it's different when God told people to kill children? Let's face it, there is no difference, morally or logically speaking, between those kinds of laws and the laws that say we should go after people who smoke pot, or drink big gulps, or who pay their employees less than we think they should. And both parties do it. Republicans want to enforce morality in the bedroom, and Democrats want to enforce morality in the wallet. And both make exceptions when it's their people in power doing it. The fact of the matter is, just that there is no God, but people who wrote the Bible, and people who act as the priests and others, condescending to tell us what God really says, there also is no government. There is no separate entity you can point to and say this is government that gives it any special dispensation from any of the logical problems we've discussed in this series. No, government is nothing more than people. It's people who make the laws, people who enforce them, people who are selective about enforcing them, people who interpret them, and on and on and on. and those people have no special claim to be above the morality they would impose on the rest of us. How dare they, statists and theists alike, repeatedly advocate immoral acts when committed by their God or government, and then turn around and say that it's our philosophy that's immoral? Stay tuned.